Sigmund Freuds Vaterschaft Krise.
Hi, I'm Ed Jones. I'm the author of Freud's Paternity Crises. This paper is a historical account of events that took place around 1900, which trace back earlier into Freud's history and also project later into the 1920s, 30s, and 40s. The critical point is the summer of 1900. During that year, Freud had an encounter in his family that has become a subject for mythology produced by Peter Swales, and has also led to a great deal of other speculation. Through looking at a number of unpublished letters, and through Anna Bernays' memoirs, and through a variety of other historical sources, I've discovered that there's a hidden element in this story, and that element involves two of Freud's sisters, Paula and Anna Bernays, who have gotten short shrift in history. And their story becomes very significant because they played a major role in the events that led Freud to go to Rome and also to seek his professorship. The materials in the paper focus on the dynamics in Freud's family that revolve around that. There are Oedipal questions, there are sibling rivalry issues, there are a number of factors that came into play during a period from about 1892 through 1900 that had a tremendous impact on what Freud thought and did in the subsequent years in the early part of the 20th century, and that had a major role in his identification as a figure in psychoanalysis. And so the result of what we're dealing with here are factors that involve his identity, his relationship with his father, his relationship with his stepbrother, who was a substitute father, problems that he had with his brother-in-law Eli Bernays, who also played a sort of paternal role in the family. And these issues are ones that have very distinct historical dimensions to them that we can examine based on records that are easy to objectively establish. Freud's relationship with Emmanuel, with Eli, and with Jacob was quite distinct from his relationship with his younger brother Alexander. Alexander and he were very close siblings, even though he had a 10-year age difference with him. They went together to Rome in the summer of 1900, and this is when Freud had a transformational experience where he felt he had finally overcome the anti-Semitic fears that he had about Rome, and that he felt that he had conquered his inner anxiety in that regard. He also met Moses, the statue by Michelangelo, in Rome for the first time, and acquired another hero for himself in terms of how he identified as a Jew. 3 years later, he and Alexander went to Athens, and when he was at Athens, he had an experience in which he realized that he felt guilt. And the guilt that he felt was that he had overcome his father. He had done something that his father was not able to do or to understand, and he had done it with Alexander. Freud's recollections of these events omitted his sisters. His omission of Anna reflected his long-standing death wish against her. Ernest Jones recalled Anna, but left Paula largely out of Freud's story for reasons that developed later. I only learned of Paula's story through conducting a content analysis of the Freud Fleece letters. This led me to examine Anna Bernays' memoir, with its stories of her and Eli's dramatic flight to New York in 1892. She had Paula join her as a governess in 1893. They were mutually dissatisfied, and Paula escaped from Anna by marrying in 1895. Anna and Eli prospered, enabling her to triumphantly return to Europe with her children as first-class passengers in 1900. The news of Anna's sudden wealth was tempered shortly thereafter by news of Paula's husband's death. Eli Bernays insisted that Paula return to Europe and wrote to Freud to offer financial assistance for Paula's support. Freud kept his distance and avoided any contact with Anna until they finally met in Ossiach with Alexander, his sister Rosa, and her husband. Freud recalled one part of that meeting in the Aliquis slip, which described a young man who was plagued by anti-Semitism, familiar with Latin, and with Freud's works. This description fit Alexander exactly. He had recently been denied a promotion due to anti-Semitism and displayed his knowledge of Freud and Latin in a satire on the interpretation of dreams. The Freud brothers were natural allies in the conquest of Rome, from which Freud returned with an identity as Moses and a readiness to become a professor. Freud's triumphs in the following decades were overshadowed by the later tragedies in which Paula and all his sisters, except Anna, perished. These memories were too painful for Ernest Jones and Freud's daughter Anna to dwell on. Fortunately, Freud died without ever knowing this. In doing so, he left us with unanswered questions about how he would have dealt with that guilt and how we should evaluate and remember him as a paternal figure.